Hello, Education2301. Here's your week 3 explanation. We're moving on to looking at intellectual and developmental delays, lower incidence, exceptionalities, and autism. So there's going to be a discussion and an activity as well as reviewing the lecture materials. This will be due next Friday, April 10th. So the first set of materials is going to be over intellectual and developmental disabilities. This is the PowerPoint if you want to see it. This is me going through the lecture and the different parts of it. This is another definition of intellectual disability. We've come a long way even since I've been in the field. In the terms when I started and was filling out ARD paperwork, it was called mental retardation, and now it is called an intellectual disability. It all started with that 1990 idea legislation about people first, and I think society is reflecting that. Here's some causes of what causes an intellectual disability, and the whole idea of developmental disabilities is someone may be delayed in speaking or delayed in reading, and the whole thing is are they just on a slower trajectory to reaching those milestones, or is it a true intellectual disability? And so your younger kids will have the diagnosis of a developmental disability. If you think about preschool, it's called Preschool for Developmental Disabilities, a PPCD room. Preschool programs for, PPCD, preschool programs for children with disabilities. If you're working with kids prior to kindergarten. Next is our autism materials, and I think I'm going to move this up front. In a face-to-face class, we watched this video and watch it and think, Dustin Hoffman right here. This is a video that came out in the 1980s. He has autism, and the question is how do you know? Like, what are his behaviors that let you know that he has an autism? And then go in and watch the lecture. And so this goes into diagnosis, symptoms, and then some strategies to work with them. Visual schedules, lots of different ways. These are some examples of visual schedules, but this is a direct link to it. Social stories, there's some more right here. And what social stories are stories, if someone with autism or anybody who doesn't like change or is going to experience a new experience, giving them the script, rehearse it before it happens, story. This is written by a man who has Asperger's, and his math skills are amazing. Temple Grandin, here's her website, and there's a video of her talking about her experience with autism. She really allows you to see into the mind of someone who has Asperger's. Autism Every Day looks at the social emotional impact on families. And this is for any exceptionality, anybody who has a child with an exceptionality. There are some dreams of what's going to happen when you're pregnant and after you give birth. And then sometimes once you get a diagnosis, you have to switch what those dreams and expectations are. And so it's a really good idea because you're going to be dealing with parents, and you may be, and realize there's always somewhere in the grief cycle. I had one parent, and one day she would be happy and she would be in acceptance and be able to move forward, and we would use sign language. And then 2 weeks later, she would be in the middle of grief and crying, and then she would be angry. And so realize that when you're across the table from somebody and they are adamant or angry, realize that they may be in a stage of grief that you don't realize that they're going through. You don't know what's happened at their house. This is ABA therapy, and this is one of the ways you can work with friends with autism. This one is a classroom assessment of autism strategies that you can use to work with them. This is your lecture material over lower incidence. So these are the ones that are going to be rarer for you to have in your classroom. And so this one's over hearing impairment. I have my teaching certification in deaf education pre-K through 12. And so this one is my passion here. Here's one on what a cochlear implant is. This one simulates types of hearing loss, simulation of what someone with a profound hearing loss might hear, how to read an audiogram when you get one, Visual impairments, Dr. Harvey works really closely with visual impairments. And so this is the PowerPoint, and then this is the lecture material. Different types of visual impairments. And then traumatic brain injury is another one. And this is actually Dr. Harvey's son, Tate. He experienced a traumatic brain injury, and so we walk through that. And then here is another about what exactly happens in the brain during a traumatic brain injury. We will have our discussion this week, and it is over special education and exceptionalities. And so usually I say this to week 4, but you have a lot due next week, so I'm bumping it up. So this will include exceptionalities that we'll talk about next week, like ADHD, learning disabilities, emotional behavioral disorders. I want you to think about special education and exceptionalities. What stood out to you about it? What gets you excited? What questions do you still have? Do you have any concerns? As a general education teacher with inclusion, you will have friends with exceptionalities in your classroom. They may have an aide, they may have a special education teacher with them, they may not. You may just be working on their accommodations and modifications, which will be provided, like any modifications, will be provided by the special education teacher. And then what are 2 takeaways that you have? So your initial post will be due by Wednesday, and then your 2 comments by Friday. Then we have a task analysis, and this is something that you can use with all exceptionalities. I tie it in with our friends with autism, but it works with your friends with IDD, your friends with ADHD. The whole thing is what you're trying to do is, if they have a large task like putting their coat on, or going through the lunch line, which is your activity, how does it look like? So here's a video where she talks you back, and it's called chaining, where you're trying to connect these skills together. And so here is another example about someone moving from the school bus to getting to first period. And so this is what yours is going to look like. So I provided you this. And so this is the Word document of this. And it looks like you can submit it as a text entry or a file upload. So you can do it either way. But you can see I've already done it for you. So the whole thing is how do you take your friend from your classroom to the lunchroom where they're sitting at the table with food? What are all the steps that are included in that? You list them here, and then can they do the step or not? This is why can't they do it? And if they can't do it, are you going to adapt it? Are you going to, let me pull the other one up. She can't propel herself, so peers will wait by the bus. Doesn't remember the combination, use a key lock. Like, so these are both like adapting. Whole thing is you may be able to teach them to memorize a code. You may be able to teach them how to button. You may be able to ask something along those lines. And so that's what you'll do for this right here. So that's going to be your assignment, and I look forward to our discussion this week.